performance scrutiny, place and corporate, starting at 5 o'clock, and it is 5 o'clock. Thank you to everybody for attending. This scrutiny meeting is being conducted remotely in accordance with the coronavirus regulations and the remote meetings protocol agreed by Council, which will operate alongside the Council standing orders to ensure that we continue to take democratic decisions in an open and transparent manner. I would remind members that this meeting is being live streamed to the public, so the normal etiquette rules and code of conduct applies. I'm not going to read all this verbatim now. Can I also remind members to ensure that their chat function is switched on and to use that facility to indicate to me when they wish to speak on a particular item. Please do not speak until I invite you to do so. And I think the rest of it we're kind of familiar with. As well as being broadcast live, a recorded version of this remote meeting will be uploaded to the council website for public viewing as soon as possible after the meeting. Welsh translation of the proceedings can be provided upon request. The images and sound recording may also be used for training purposes within the council. I kind of skimmed through that. Obviously, the full points of reference are there if anybody wants to access them at a later date. So we're covering 3 areas today, and thank you to the leader and officers and other cabinet members for joining us. But we'll start with apologies. Are there any apologies, Neil?
Just Councillor Kane Critchley, please, Chair.
Okay, and
Chair, can I give apologies for Councillor Jevons, please?
Yeah, and Councillor Charles Ferris has indicated that he has a prior engagement later and may have to leave, as I believed also does Councillor Mark Wicker. But thank you, gentlemen, for attending for as long as you can. Thank you ever so much. Are there any declarations of interest? No. Okay, so 2020-2021 service plan mid-year reviews. We've got regeneration first of all. We'll find that on pages 9 to 64 of our papers, and we've got the leader, the cabinet leader, to join us first of all. Jane, would you like to give us an overview first of all, or if not yourself, maybe one of your officers, maybe highlighting or referencing any points of concern in the report, and then I'll open it up to questions. If you could keep the presentation to I don't know, 5-10 minutes. And could I remind members that it might be wise to switch off your mics and cameras in order to make the bandwidth or whatever it is easier to see. Okay, so Jane, I think you're up first. Regeneration.
Thank you, Chair. So obviously members have had an opportunity to look at performance against the service plan, and what is evidence from the mid-year review of performance is that COVID has had a significant impact on areas of service delivery within that plan. However, whilst there are challenges around that in terms of the targets, what I would like to make very clear and really emphasise is the outstanding performance of the service areas in terms of being redeployed in order to support the emergency response. So I think it's important to be really clear about that. You'll see there are a number of pressures that we have experienced, and most notably the pressure on the housing services, given the impact of the coronavirus regulations introduced by the Welsh Government in terms of homelessness and rough sleeping. and also the continued impact of that in terms of the service provision, because I think, Chair, what's important for us to remember within this context is that whilst we've been able to work with and accommodate a number of people who were rough sleeping,
yeah,
what the impact of the lockdown is actually been quite significant in terms of the impact that it has on existing accommodation arrangements for individuals and families as well. So we've seen an increase in presentations to the service during this period as well. And I think it's perfectly understandable to point that out and to understand that the lockdown did place pressures on families, on individuals and on communities. And we see that reflected in the increase in presentations for support. I mean, likewise, in other areas of the service, for example, with planning, you'll see that that's had an impact on performance in terms of the decisions and the time frame for decision making, because clearly the lockdown's had an impact on officers being able to undertake site visits. We've got a huge number of positives, and I really would like to take this opportunity to thank all of the officers within the organisation for really going above and beyond the requirements of their normal day-to-day roles in terms of delivering. What I'd like to do now is invite the head of service to provide some comments, and then we'd both be happy to take questions, Chair. So I don't know if Tracy would like to come in.
thank you, Jane, and apologies to everyone there. I suddenly realised that my battery was running out, so apologies. Yes, so Tracy.
Thank you, Chair. So I'd just like to sort of expand upon what the leaders already said. I mean, obviously, it's fair to say, I think that it's been a bit of a roller coaster for RH over the past 8 months. You know, when lockdown started, we stopped a number of our services. So the libraries closed, the disabled facilities grants stopped, and our construction sites closed. So we weren't doing progress in things like Market Arcade. However, in many other ways, I think RH stepped up to the mark to deliver some of those critical services that the leaders outlined. I mean, the work that we did in terms of providing the key worker childcare was significant. So the hubs teams delivered the out of hours childcare for key workers outside of the provision that was being provided by the schools, and they also provided the weekend cover and the summer holiday and school holiday key worker childcare cover. You know, there were massive numbers of children involved, and the benefit obviously to our key workers was extensive. We obviously also administered the food parcel scheme on behalf of Welsh Government for the shielding residents. So that team telephoned over 5,000 residents to see whether they needed any assistance and whether they were in need of a food parcel, and over 600 weekly food parcels were delivered as a result of those phone calls that we did. And obviously the teams were also involved with the emergency food parcels for some of our vulnerable residents who were self-isolating or just simply didn't have the means to buy food and access food at that time. So they really made a significant difference. Obviously, the leaders touched on the temporary accommodation that was provided for our homeless residents. I think one of the things I would sort of point out, I know there's quite a big article in Newport Matters on sort of homelessness, but we managed to provide 15 units of fully supported emergency accommodation in just 7 days. You know, it was a massive achievement for the team in really difficult circumstances. And similarly, I want to sort of just sort of talk about the business support team. They've been providing support for over 5,000 businesses over the lockdown period, you know, in terms of advice and support. And obviously they've been administering some of the grant funding along with our business rates colleagues. You know, that's millions of pounds worth of funding to over 4,000 Newport businesses, and it's really made a difference to those businesses between them being able to keep surviving or actually just folding. And I think, as the leaders sort of already said, that sort of work isn't always reflected in the service plan, because we write the actions and the priorities and the PIs, you know, not in the knowledge that we're going to enter a lockdown period. So I thought it was really important that we sort of emphasise some of the work that teams have been doing outside of the actions and the sort of priorities in the service plan. But I think, you know, there are a number of of red indicators on the PIs, but I think that what the report does give is an explanation as to why that's the case, and I don't know if you want me to go through any of those red indicators, but
Tracy, it's entirely up to you. If there's anything that you feel as if might be of concern to us and you want to answer those in advance, that's fine. Or if you want to leave it open to questioning, that's fine too. So whatever you're more comfortable with.
I think we've given quite a robust explanation in the report as to why those indicators are red or amber. So I'm happy just to take questions, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Right, members, nobody's indicated as yet, as I can see, with a raised hand. Are there any questions?
Sorry, where's the raised hand? I can't find it.
Well, Mctad, I was waiting for you, Mctad. So you've got.
Oh,
if you,
thank you. Yeah.
Well, you're there now anyway, Mctad. So I'm guessing that you have some questions. Over to you.
Yeah, it shows that the pre-meeting idea does work, doesn't it? So you've got some idea what I wanted to ask about.
Thank you. That's why I did it. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. If I can ask the leader or head of service, it's quite interesting because I picked it up. It's a green, but it's very interesting because, given the sort of COVID situation and the people say unprecedented times, but without any doubt, that meant scaling down of economic activities. I mean, it's just something we have to accept, really. But I picked it up because it's indicating as 80% as green, and it actually addresses the issue of inward investment, which I think the leader would know that that's a very sort of subject very close to my interest in here. Yeah, the pre-meeting, I think Gareth was there, and he pointed out that addendum, which the action speaks on, just in case you want to know what I'm speaking about, is page 14 on the agenda, and it's action 1, and it says that an addendum to the economic growth strategy, focusing on recovery during and post-COVID, has been supported by Cabinet. I think Gareth explained that happened in June. I've just been sort of looking at that and sort of looked at the decision at the end of it. If I could just ask, there's a statement here which is quite sort of short. It says high level of interest from inward investors remains at the current time, and if someone can elaborate on that, please, as that doesn't tell me anything. Does it tell me there is high interest on their part, and how do we know there is this high level? Have they expressed it to us? Do we know maybe of some projects they perhaps intend to carry out in Newport? Just some explanation to that statement.
Would you like me to?
Yes, please. Or Tracy, whoever you feel is more comfortable, but Jane, yeah.
Okay, so just to provide an overview, whilst it was important to update the economic growth strategy in relation to the impact of the pandemic. There was I also held a round table with business leaders. There was a private meeting with business leaders, really to listen to their concerns and any issues that they were having, and Tracy was present at that meeting as well, and just to get a sense of any impact that may have on the future of investment within the city. And actually the discussion was largely positive, so we have had positive feedback. And a further point that I would like to make that is really important in relation to this is that whilst some areas of service delivery have been impacted by the pandemic, we work collaboratively in partnership at the regional level with Cardiff Capital Region, the City Deal, And also we work with the Western Gateway. And again, there are discussions, ongoing discussions around inward investment through that. So I feel at the moment there is still confidence and there is still interest in Newport, and certainly in investing in Newport. And particularly, I think we've had some really interesting planning applications recently that show the intention of businesses and what they would like to do in terms of their commitment to Newport. And I'm very confident about that. So in terms of inward investment, we are maintaining those all-important relationships with businesses and with business leaders. And we are having those ongoing discussions and working with our partners within the Cardiff Capital Region to continue to attract that investment. Tracy, would you like to come in at this point?
Yes, thanks, Leader. I just wanted to add, obviously, we can't give you details, specific details of some of the inward investment inquiries that we deal with because they're commercially sensitive, but I think, you know, we've all been sort of surprised and also encouraged by the amount of sort of interest that people still have in terms of investing in Newport in a, you know, in quite uncertain times. So I'm sorry I can't give you those details, but
so, yeah, sorry, I'm not asking for details. I appreciate that, you know, and this was an open meeting and there may be some commercial sensitivity. I appreciate that. I think it's really we are saying there is high interest here, or there is interest. I'd be happy with saying it's even moderate interest at this particular time. It's an indication I'm asking for, you know. I mean, is there an idea that maybe some people are interested and who you know, who that might be or something, you know? No, it's not details. Is really the statement. It needs to be underpinned to us, you know, to say high level of interest. Okay, how do we know? Where is the areas maybe where there may be high interest?
If I could just provide with some further information in relation to that. As you know, we've been developing a cluster in terms of compound semiconductors and also cyber and technology. We've just about to move the information station into the museum and library so that we can expand the provision that we've got around cyber within the station buildings. That is an area of growth for the city. And we're confident in the interest that we're having from other external businesses, including international interest that we're having in that. What is also really important, and I feel we should emphasise in relation to this, is that we're also looking at the skills agenda for this. So this afternoon, before I joined you, I was at a meeting of the Regional Skills Partnership Board, because it's really important, whilst we have investment opportunities and we certainly see the growth and expansion of new businesses, that we're also supporting people to develop the skills to enable them to really secure good quality employment opportunities in them as well. So I hope that helps to give you a sense of some of the interest. As Tracy said, there are some commercial sensitivities around this at this time. Tracy, I don't know if you'd like to add anything else.
No, Leader, I think you've covered it really well there. I mean, you know, I think it's just a case of probably watch this space because, you know, hopefully at some point in the near future we might have some good news to share.
Okay.
Thanks, Chair.
Yeah, we do well.
Is there another question, McDad?
Yeah, you mentioned that, Jane, as well, as though you were anticipating, really. the Cardiff Capital City Region. You mentioned that, and that in your sort of first reply to me, and that was my next question. It's showing an amber, and I can understand why, because it's saying no further progress pending resolution of governance by the Welsh Government in respect of corporate joint committees. So that tells me, you know, at the moment the situation is sort of dormant, and that the Capital City Region therefore is not necessarily doing much really, or is likely to do much in the near future. I don't know. Perhaps you will put me right on that.
No, that's not the case actually. In fact, they're in the Cardiff Capital Region is in a really good position. So whereas previously they'd only funded a small number of projects, they have got a number of significant projects coming through what they describe as the pipeline. And the pipeline is the application process, which whereby businesses apply for funding from Cardiff Capital Region, but that process is incredibly rigorous. So all applications are scrutinised by an investment panel and by professionals who provide us with professional advice. So there's a number, I think there's, and probably from the slide that I looked at earlier, there's probably around 7 further projects coming through the region as a whole. Now, we have had, and we've had training this week for members on the corporate joint committees, and there is some discussion because of the positive working relationships and the maturity of the working relationship within the Cardiff Capital Region as to whether the Cardiff Capital Region Cabinet, which is currently looking at economic development, should provide the economic well-being aspect of the corporate joint committees. However, those discussions are still ongoing. But I just to reassure you and to reassure all members, there is actually a lot of activity. It's also going through at the moment, about to go through what is described as the Gateway Review. And the Gateway Review is the point where UK government evaluates the effectiveness of the city deal and the work that is done to date, and also makes a decision really. If the decision is about the continuation of it and the continued funding of it. And I'm really pleased to say that so far the feedback from UK government has been really positive about it, and currently that Gateway Review is still underway, but I would anticipate a positive outcome. So actually the regional working is still ongoing and still working really well for.
Thank you, Leader. Is there another question, McDad?
James, so what do they mean then about the issue of governance here?
So are you talking specifically about the introduction of a strategic development plan?
Yes, Leader, that's what it's for. That's the action.
The action that around governance, McDad, is really simple. So when the discussion on corporate joint committees actually started, one of the aspects of that was that there should be a corporate joint committee on strategic planning, so that local authorities needed to come together and develop a strategic development plan. In the initial discussions, that was very much a voluntary activity, and it's been viewed by the Cardiff Capital Region as a voluntary activity. However, it has now become, in the bill that was passed this week, mandatory. So within the Cardiff Capital Region, the 10 local authorities have to develop a strategic development plan. Now, in principle, the notion of a strategic development plan makes perfect sense. If we're to present ourselves as a region to international investors, we have to have an idea of what we've got, what capability we've got within the region. The point around governance, as Tracy will be able to support, because this has caused me a great deal of frustration and is an ongoing issue, so it still is ongoing, is that as opposed to the one member, one vote principle that the Cabinet has established in the Cardiff Capital Region, there's disagreement amongst partners on the distribution of voting rights in terms of the strategic development plan. This disagreement is ongoing. However, now we've been mandated to develop a strategic development plan by Welsh Government. It is something that we'll have to find a resolution for. Obviously, this will affect our eventually will impact on our own LDP and our own planning decisions as well. But at the moment, it's very much at the developmental stages in terms of governance, because both Newport and Cardiff had reservations about the proposed model and distribution of voting rights, and we still need to resolve that.
McDad, okay, yeah. Thank you. Mark, I was getting a little confused there. Thank you, Jane, and thank you, Tracy. Mark, did you have a question?
Yes, thanks, Chair. Yeah, I was due to also attend a school governors, but I've spoken to the head, and I've managed to, you know, I don't have to bilocate this afternoon. Let me put it that way. I think the question is, well, Jane may want to comment on it. It's probably more one for Tracy, really, a sort of slightly technical one. If you look at pages 20, sorry, I'm looking on my electronic version here. It's page 30, which deal with the performance measures. It's those sort of red areas there, 30. There's a couple on 31, 3 on 31, and a couple on 32. And those areas are planning determinations, basically concerned with areas like planning determinations, skills, employment and business growth. I'm just sort of wrapping them up together rather than sort of going through them piecemeal. And there's clearly a strong correlation there between the COVID crisis, and you would, what I'm going to suggest is that you would expect those areas really to be either like that or probably worse, actually, because of COVID. In the sense that it's inevitable that it will have hit the authority in terms of managing to sort of the throughput of planning applications. People in the employment and growth and business growth and skills and so on, it's quite clear that that they've been hit by. Sorry, can you still hear me, Chair? I don't know.
Yes, we got you. Yeah, no, Mark, we're listening intently.
Yeah. And I just wondered that. Well, the first point is just to congratulate the officers and the administration and leader for managing to, you know, to keep the whole ship afloat really across the period in general terms. But the second point I wanted to make was that just to ask Tracy in particular is, given the surrounding circumstances, and we know we've just come through another.
We've lost you now, Mark.
Lockdown. Have we any indication of where we're heading on in those areas where those red indicators are really?
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, I mean, I think that it is an improving picture. You know, we haven't. We didn't stop determining and accepting planning applications throughout lockdown. The difficulty we faced in terms of dealing with them within the 8 weeks target was the fact that we couldn't undertake some site visits. We just couldn't get into to people's properties and on land to do the site visit we needed to make sure that it was acceptable. So, you know, in terms of performance, I think that we're going to see improvements going forward. And obviously, as we've started to book appointments and to deal with working skills side of things and the number of businesses in terms of startups, I think we're going to see improvements going forward, because you know that work is ongoing now, and you know, and I think especially with working skills staff, you know, we don't know what's going to happen once furlough ends. We anticipate there being issues with more people needing our support for working skills, and certainly we've got contingency plans lined up to deal with, you know, any sort of big increases in people needing our support. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. There's nobody that I can see indicating. Are there any other questions from anybody? No. So Tracy and Jane, I've just got a couple, if that's okay. On page 11, and back to the incredibly good work you guys have done, or the council have done, with regards to homelessness. So you've got page 11, service area risk R1, pressure on homelessness services. What mitigations are in place to deliver this, the services to meet the long-term needs of the service users? So we've done an incredible job in the year now and in recent months, but in the long term, what mitigations are in place long term based on the learning of the past few months?
Shall I start, Chair?
Yeah, if you would like. Yeah, or Tracy.
Well, as you know, Chair, one of the challenges really, and rightly so, was the policy position taken by Welsh Government during this period. But the Welsh Government commitment to addressing these issues actually continues, and so we've put a number of bids in partnership with partners to really help us to access further units of accommodation, because there are two sides to this story, and the one is very much about the supply of property and units of accommodation, and the other of course is about support. So and if I can just explain both of those. So we put a number of bids into the phase 2 Welsh Government phase 2 homelessness fund, and we have been successful with a number of those bids, and I think the report highlights we will be able to secure an additional 50 units through that, and some of that will be through using modern methods of construction as well, so thinking again about the climate emergency and environmental issues, but also, if I may, Chair, that links into the foundational economy there as well. So keeping that money going round within the country as well. So we are able to do that. Of course, there's still a need, and we've worked. We had a strategic housing forum meeting yesterday with our RSL partners, and we've got a continued and ongoing commitment with them to try and access additional units. And one thing that the RSLs are trying to do in relation to that are to look at any void properties they've got that they've taken out of their housing register because they don't meet Welsh Housing Quality Standard, that there could be some adjustment to, again, to provide more temporary units. So that's some of the ongoing work that we've done. And if you look at some of the specific schemes that have been funded, they will have that longevity. So, for example, Welsh Government have agreed to fund a scheme with Mind, where the flats above Mind, where the building above Mind in the city centre will be converted into flats, and they'll be able to provide supported accommodation for people experiencing serious mental health issues there. And that is that support which is all important in terms of the sustainability. This is absolutely not just about providing four walls. It's the support. And during this period, we've had a Rough Sleepers floating supports team, which we still have, which is still in operation, and a Rough Sleepers group, which has been chaired by the police, but is now coming to become a subgroup of our Strategic Housing Forum. And we have had some absolutely great successes in terms of support. So we've taken people through into Housing First through this. But I noticed Ben was on the call, and I don't know if Ben is still here, but if he is, I'd really welcome, thanks Ben, I'd really welcome Ben to just mention or share with you the successes that we've had during this period with people who have drug dependency issues, because we've worked, it's been absolutely outstanding, and we should really be shouting about the new kind of, I don't know how you describe it, I don't want to say drug, but but we've been with GS, we've been using a different solution. There's a different solution has been found for people, and it's had a great deal of success now. And what I'd like to point out in relation to that particular issue is it's got the potential to change people's lives, to help people who are in the most difficult of circumstances turn their lives around. But it will also reduce the pressures on public services. And Ben, if you'd like to share with colleagues on the committee just some of the work that's been done around that, that would be fantastic.
Yeah, thank you, Leader, and thank you, Chair. The treatment and the programme that the Leader mentions there has been absolutely transformational for a number of individuals, and in Gwent we've taken full opportunity of that in terms of maximising the available funding and resources on the programme. The treatment itself is called Buvidal. And that replaces what is probably more widely understood, which is the usual treatment, which is methadone. The difference being is that methadone has got, does have street value and it does have a position on the street, and the Buvidal is an administered drug, generally administered by GDAS and by trained nurses, and it's done in a controlled environment, and it's generally about once a month it's administered. In the first instance, it's a more frequent administration with lesser quantities, but it basically nulls the effect of further opiate drug intakes, which for a lot of individuals allows them then to go about a more stable lifestyle and allows them to seek more stable forms of support with our partners. So in the first instance, that'll be through sort of the floating support that the Leader mentioned, and then more long term, it allows a greater level of independence to seek support services such as doing their own shopping, doing their own cooking, start managing their own budgets and levels of income. And that's something that we've had significant positive response to at Mission Court and at other supported forms of accommodation. Excuse me. And I know more recently there's been quite an emphasis provided by a number of our partner organisations to Welsh Government to encourage some further financial support to enhance that programme based on the success and the value that the Buvidal programme has had. Not only in Newport, but it has had a profound impact on users in Newport. So it's been a huge success for a number of candidates that we've placed over the last 6 months. Excellent, thank you both, and I'm kind of glad that I asked that question to get that information. Honestly, thank you. It's really encouraging. Mick Dara, you want to come back in, and I know this is an area of great interest to you, so we're allowed to come back in. Is there a question, though, Mick Dara?
It's not a question, really. It's just a comment on how good, really, how well the council and the officers have managed the issue of homelessness during a very difficult time. I mean, the number of people who used to have a go at me about, homeless people sleeping in tents, in shopways and all that. I know it might have taken COVID-19, but that's been a good opportunity in a way. I mean, obviously, no one would have wished COVID-19 to be here in the first place, far from it. But I think the council, really, in partnership with their other agencies, they've really sort of done us proud on this issue, really. I'm not saying, we've dealt with it 100%, but they've really done it. And, we took vulnerable people off the street with issues. I mean, I've had lots of emails about issues even after that, but still, I have to say, as a ward councillor, I would say thank you very much for all the good work that's been done. And there's always room for improvement, that's our job in Scrutiny, I know, but I think we should also say thank you when sort of good work has been sort of delivered here. So yes, thank you,
Mick Dara. I'm sure we would all echo Mick Dara's comments, and it's so reassuring that the long-term project is continuing too, which is great. There was just one more question, which page 28, action 5, investigate opportunities to improve domestic energy efficiency. and relieve fuel poverty in Newport. Do we know when work with partner organisations are due to restart? I suppose that's more for Tracy, is it?
Tracy or Ben, maybe?
Yeah, Ben, please, if that's okay, Chair. Thank you.
Oh, no problem at all, no. There is kind of a link there, Ben, to obviously the green agenda and perhaps future jobs and so on. So that's why I picked that one. But I do understand that obviously some, if not all of this work has been stalled because of COVID. So it's not to catch anybody out. It's merely it would be amiss of me not to ask the question, perhaps.
Yeah, Chair, it has, it still remains a key focus for us to move forward with. It has, clearly we've got to reduce our carbon footprint and emissions, and I know it's we have just recently had some discussions in the Strategic Housing Forum that the leader mentioned just earlier. We did take the opportunity whilst we had our RSL partners sat at the table. We did take the opportunity to have a conversation with them, and it's something that they are very keen to support and have a discussion with us. And I think the leader also made a commitment to have discussions with the Public Service Board as well, which clearly as officers we'd look to support her in those conversations. So I think those discussions are planned to take place, but clearly they have been stalled due to the summer's activity of COVID.
Okay, thank you ever so much. I'll just go back to Tracy. Did you want to add something there? You came back in.
Yeah, I was just going to ask if Ben can just explain a little bit more about the retrofit scheme with our registered social landlord partners. I think it's probably really interesting for Scrutiny to hear about that.
Yeah, my apologies, remiss not to mention that, Tracy. Yes. There's been a very large bid that's been accepted. So the funding is coming from Welsh Government. It's the funding bid itself is the Optimised Retrofit Fund. A number of our RSL partners in Newport have been successful in bidding as almost a consortium and have been successful in receiving funding. It's there's terminology around sort of retrofitting into properties of shallow and deep. This scheme is intended to undertake shallow investment, and a lot of that is some of the more, if you like, some of the more obvious forms of retrofit. So it's insulation, external cladding, roof insulation, LED light replacements and the like. So again, Newport RSLs are part of that bid. I don't have a figure. I don't think a figure has been released as to the number of properties that will be affected in Newport as a result of that. But it's something that, again, we did raise only yesterday with our partners to understand a bit more detail as to what the numbers are, and associated with the numbers is obviously what impact that will have on a couple of things. One will be the reduction of the carbon in terms of Newport as a city, but secondly, what will the reduction to the users of those stock where they receive reduced running costs, and that will be that's something then that ties back into the sort of the comment around fuel poverty, and if we can reduce the running costs to some of these properties that individuals are placed within, it has a double effect. Not only does it reduce the carbon footprint, it will reduce the running cost of the occupants as well.
Thank you, Ben. One last time, does anybody else have any questions? Nobody's raised anything again, or since the last one. I think we're done. Ben, Tracy, and Jane, thank you ever so much. You're more than welcome to stay, but I'm guessing that you've probably got other things to attend to. So thank you ever so much, and I think all members will join me in saying thank you for all the work that you've done as a team during COVID, and particularly helping the most vulnerable people in Newport, as well as the communities we represent. Thank you ever so much. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Thank you to Jane, Ben and Tracy. We now moving on to city services, which I keep saying gentlemen, but we are all gentlemen. I wasn't sure if you were there, Paul. I was getting a little bit nervous.
Being very quiet, Chair.
Well, I know I was looking for your. Yeah, I'll have to learn how to nudge the initials along the bottom there. When I was, would have been most disappointed if you couldn't have joined us, Paul. We've got. So we're on to city services. It is gentlemen because we're all male committee. I'm sure we all know, but we can find all the relevant papers on 65 to 110. I understand that the cabinet member Roger has given his apologies. Is that correct, Neil? Yeah,
that's right, Chair.
Right.
Yeah,
Okay. So
the deputy leader phoned me just in advance. Has been taken away by something urgent. So
no.
I know how keen he is to attend these. So if there are,
Yeah.
I mean, I'm perfectly happy to answer all the questions. But there's anything for the deputy leader specifically, he's asked me to take that away, and he will get back to you as well. So
thanks, Paul. That's totally fine. You're quite used to these things, so if you could give us perhaps a 5-minute, 10-minute maximum overview, any areas in red that you want to sort of preempt us and answer any points that or any questions that we might raise, and then I'll open it up to questions. And over to you, Paul.
Chair. Yeah, I mean, without stating the obvious, it's been a challenging first half of the year. I did think I'd be doing my first scrutiny explaining how we'd managed to just deal with the impacts of Storm Dennis, but that was actually like to what followed. But I think, you know, in terms of the impact on our service, we were dealing with the back end of Storm Dennis, then we got hit by COVID, and it has been a huge challenge for our frontline operational services. There's a lot in this report in terms of our performance indicators and what we set out originally for the year, but it, you know, in honesty, it's probably 1% of the stuff we've had to deal with. We've been dealing with completely new things, you know, working out how to man vehicles with people in their own bubbles, working out how to run contact centres from everyone's houses rather than lining people up in a line, working out how to operate a household waste recycling centre whilst complying with social distancing and introducing booking systems. It's been a big, rapid learning curve, and, you know, it goes without saying, I'm really grateful to all the staff that's worked hard in difficult times, but also specifically to the frontline supervisors and managers. You know, they've had to juggle some tremendously difficult operational challenges. If you come to work one morning and you start at 5 o'clock and, you know, two of your team have had to self-isolate, but you've got to stay within your bubbles, resourcing that at the beginning of the day is really difficult. You know, as well as the big scale stuff that people have seen, it's little things like, you know, we were used to emptying the city centre bins 4 or 5 times a day. Suddenly during the lockdown, they don't need emptying at all. Yet a bin on a distant countryside path now needs emptying 4 times as much, and it's a huge logistical challenge to adapt to that really quickly. But I think they've done a really good job. I'm really proud of the teams really on that. Overall, we've managed to stay within budget. We're about 1% down. That's a bit of a false figure, really. We've been severely impacted by income loss and by additional operational costs for shielding staff. That has been reclaimed from Welsh Government, so that probably accounts to about £2 million in our service area at the moment. So it does show the challenge that we're dealing with. In terms of delivery, our delivery hasn't been impacted too much. We've caught back up on key projects. Some of our capital projects are a little bit behind. But I'm really pleased with the progress we've made on active travel in particular. You'll know yourself, Councillor, the work done at 14 Locks, which is a really great improvement there. You shut the road from me in Coed Melon. We've completed that work earlier in the year, and that's a really nice project as well. And we're rolling out more of that as we speak. Monkey Island over in Liswerry is the plans for that are coming along, and we've started work on doing the prelims for Devon Place. So, you know, there are a lot of projects that we're catching up on, which is positive. In terms of the performance indicators, you know, most of them are looking okay. There's the obvious ones impacted by COVID, both positive and negative. Our visitors to leisure centres in the first quarter were understandably slightly less than you would have hoped. But equally, our number of active travel journeys increased threefold. I don't think we can really claim much credit for that, but it it shows the vagaries of what we're now dealing with. There's a specific view around the contact centre. I think one thing to highlight on that, on your report, there's a blip in the system, so it's actually reversing the contact centre ones. So where we're showing number of customer transactions requests mediated at 30% against a target of 70. Actually, it's the other way round. They're still off a little bit, but they're broadly where they should be. So all the contact centre ones, for some reason, have flipped. Just to make councillors aware of that. Some other good performances. I'm really pleased with the recycling rate. We've done a lot on the environment this year and last year. Our recycling rate has gone up considerably more than we anticipated. The HWRC booking system has actually also helped with that CA site performance, which had remained very low. That's improved a lot. We've got on the plan about the LED rollout. We completed the street lights at the back end of last year, and we're now doing buildings, and that's a huge amount of carbon saving and cost saving for the council. So those are a couple of highlights, if you like.
Good, thanks, Paul. Right, have we got anybody indicating you, or have I can't see anybody. Any questions?
I thought I had, Chair.
Right, I do apologise. I've got McDad. I'll go to you, and then I've got Mark indicating. Thank you. Sorry, McDad. Off you go.
Yeah, Paul. It's a good story, to be honest with you. I mean, again, considering all the problems of COVID, we've got to congratulate your team. Really, they maintain the collection of waste, recycling. I mean, that's excellent. And to be honest with you, city services, as far as I'm concerned, they've been very good. When we report issues to them, flight tipping, that sort of thing. So I think that's been very good. And I mean that despite some of the issues you highlighted. So I think from the performance indicators and all that, I haven't got much to worry about here. But I've got two questions to ask you. One is sort of a bit more strategic, which is to do with the M4. So that's page 97.
Okay, that's good.
I think. There we are. We're talking about, let me just get this, please. It's 98, 97, yeah. About the collaboration with the South Wales Transport Commission to identify opportunities and alternatives to the M4 relief road. I mean, you don't need me to tell you how important the issue of congestion in Newport. And I know, I mean, COVID has been, again, one of the silver linings it had. Sort of reduced travel and all that, but I'm wondering really, do we consider that the level of traffic, and especially around the M4, will return to those days? And if so, how are we trying to meet that challenge? Because as far as the South Wales Transport Commission, they seem to be taking it very easy, haven't they? Considering, I mean, it's been a year and a half since the First Minister decided we're not going to have the M4 relief road. But we haven't heard anything. And I mean, what we've heard is, will it really do the trick? But sort of to make it a bit more interesting, the COVID has meant a lot of people working home. So do we know? I mean, would you like to comment on all that? First of all, really, are we going to return to those levels, and is what's been done adequate?
So in terms of returning to those levels, who knows what normal life will look like in 6 months to a year. You would expect that there will be somewhat of a return to people working in offices, but I know it's opened people up to perhaps doing more working from home. I know from my service here, it's very mixed. It's a challenge for many people that, many people aren't able to really work effectively from home, small children and the likes. It can be a challenge, but I think we'll probably see more of that. But equally, the transport pressures won't go away. The The Commission did publish its interim report in July. It's emerging conclusions and some recommendations around that, and it will shortly publish its final report. You know, we've spoken to officers working on that, and you know, we'll work with them on the outcomes of that. Yeah, transport congestion remains a big issue in Newport, not just because of people getting to work, but in terms of the impact on pollution and the impact on people's lives. So yes, there's a lot of issues still to be resolved. You know, during the lockdown, perhaps you know, a few things went unnoticed. There's quite a good improvement in Newport Transport's fleet, replacing some of the vehicles with nice modern electric buses, which will help. Obviously, at the moment, we can't really push people to be all jumping on a bus with each other. So it's you know, it's very difficult to make long-term projections where we are at the moment. I can see through the data that I get in terms of people using car parks and road traffic counters, that it's, you know, it's partially returned to normal, but not fully there yet. We will wait for the final report, and we will engage fully with the recommendations, but equally, I think this whole experience will have a lasting impact. It'll have a lasting impact on the way people work and the way people treat transport.
Okay.
So you sort of we have to be hopeful of what this commission would be producing as a final report. Is that how you see it, Paul?
Yeah, I think we have to wait. You know, it won't be long now. And we do have to be hopeful. Again, I do think there probably will be a lasting legacy, even down to the, you know, I mentioned half joking the increase in active travel. It's surprising by, and I judge this by the, you know, the complaints and the compliments that my service gets, and I see in the inboxes. It's just a huge increase in interest in more active travel journeys. Now that people get out and see the infrastructure, what will be the lasting impact of that? I don't know, Councillor.
Okay. McDad, is there anything else?
I've got another question, but I could come back if you want.
Oh yeah, go on. Give somebody else a chance. Okay.
Yes.
There we go. No, McDad, I always find your questioning really of interest. So thank you, and thank you for targeting it towards and to remind members that we are focused on performance, budget, and any risks, but we allow some to go off track occasionally. Mark, Councillor Whitcutt, you had a question?
Yes, thanks, Chair. If I could just refer to page 69, which is action point 1, identify funding source to deliver the required hostile vehicle mitigation. And it says that, you know, that we didn't get the matched funding and that we're waiting confirmation of funding from Welsh Government before further progress can be made. If I can just link it with a green one a bit further down too, which is basically about the traffic regulation order, and it says actually action outcome is just the implementation of physical measures. It's necessary traffic regulation order is in place, and you've linked that again to the funding being installed on the HVM project. I just wondered if you might be able to give us an update of where we are both on the funding and the implementation, Paul, please.
So
thanks, Mark.
Yeah, at the start of the year, obviously Welsh Government paused a lot of capital grant projects. They were sizing up how they dealt with their budget. During the end of the first lockdown, additional money was made available, not for the core project they were looking for, but in terms of helping businesses in the city centre use the open space around them and making that a safer environment for pedestrians. So we were able to use some of that funding for that purpose. People would have seen the city centre, the yellow gates and the system that we've got in place there with barriers outside pubs and the like. You know, that's not ideal. That's not a long-term solution. You know, it was a quick fix, if you like, to try and help those businesses get back to trading safely. So the long-term ambition still remains there, and I think Welsh Government, like UK government, is having to reassess how it puts its budget together. So we still have long-term ambitions and a project that we'd like to fulfil there, but we've got this interim arrangement at the moment.
Thanks very much.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mark. Abraham, Councillor Hyatt, you were next, and then John, you're after Councillor Hyatt.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Obviously, I wanted to ask, because of the COVID situation, the Household Waste Recycling Centre is only accepting appointments only. How big a bearing has that had on fly tipping, and has that impacted on the budget?
Okay.
So in terms of fly tipping, I mean, I think I say this quite often, is that you know, most of the fly tipping that we have to deal with is, you know, is not as a result of individual households. It's related to organised people who don't want to pay their disposal costs. And so whilst the CA site was shut, we did have some increase, a small increase in fly tipping. It's not now noticeably different from previous years. The booking system has its pros and cons. In fact, you know, a lot of people who've used the system have contacted us to say, actually, it's a significant improvement. They don't have to queue on the SDR blocking traffic for an hour. They can pick the time when they go in, and we are able to make it COVID secure by spacing people out enough. So, you know, in many ways that's helped. Just as, you know, just for information, since we reopened at the back end of May, we've dealt with 46,000 individual cars and customers through the CA site. So, you know, it shows that that's been a pretty good success. We've also by being able to control the flow, actually been able to ensure we have a greater recycling rate. So that's a positive. In terms of fly tipping more generally, it's probably worth pointing out that last year we invested in a number of cameras. They've been placed around the city over the last 6 months, and very soon you will see some significant results from those. We will let that come to fruition over the next month or so, but there's been quite a significant investment from the administration into some covert surveillance and overt surveillance in terms of fly tipping cameras. But, you know, like anything, it remains a problem, and I don't think we can, you know, it's acceptable to say something is available so you can just fly tip. It's a bit like saying, you know, someone can't afford something in a shop, so it's acceptable to steal. You know, this is a crime. The people who do this are a completely disregard for their environment, and you know, regardless of the challenges we face.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you, Councillor. John, you're next, and then Charles, as indicated.
Okay. Thank you, Chair. Mine's not a question. It's regarding the contact centre. The public have come to expect services the contact centre provide at the information station in its present location. Can we make absolutely sure that when we move to the museum site that is well publicised and the public are made absolutely aware there's a new location? There's a lot of elderly people use it for different reasons, and trudging from one to another is going to be perhaps a bit difficult. And the other point I'd raise is that it's pleasing to hear the head of a service state publicly that he's proud of all his team. And I think this is a public meeting, and that type of comment helps occasionally. Thank you.
Thanks, John. I have comments there, but I'm sure we would all echo them. Charles. No, thank you, John. Seriously, very valid. Charles.
Yes.
Do you have a question or a comment? Or?
Yeah, well, returning really to the gating measures in Griffin Street and other streets around the around the town. I take it these are only, you say they're only temporary, Paul. How long is temporary? Will the gates be removed from at that point? And I'm also curious to know about the level of consultation. In other words, how many businesses were asked and what the percentage of response was from that. And yeah, that was it. That's basically it.
Okay,
So,
Charles.
So in terms of the gating at the moment, those gated locations are actually enforcing existing traffic orders. The conversations with the businesses were about extending or reducing down the opening time, and that was part of a broader discussion that my regen colleagues did with the businesses themselves. So there was quite comprehensive discussions at the time. What's good for one business may not be great for others, and it was a compromise. So we worked quite closely with the bid on that. But I think they all recognise, particularly for the hospitality industry, and if you remember, if you go back to when the rules were originally relaxed, there was no drinking inside. So in particular, then we needed to try and support that as much as possible. In terms of the times that, and in terms of the gates themselves, they're temporary in the extent that, you know, they're not a durable long-term solution. I think they look okay, but they're not something that you would seek to invest in long term. They'll last a few years, but
okay,
we would ideally like a more professional solution to go in there.
Pardon me, so they're likely to be here for a few years, Paul, eh?
Yeah, I mean, it depends in terms of when the COVID restrictions are fully released. If we get a vaccine in the spring and everything goes back to normal, that may change. But the gating themselves, they're at points which do have existing traffic orders on. So although the times have changed to reduce that down to make sure the pubs are able to open at the right times, those gates themselves there, if everyone went back to normal in the summer, in theory could stay there and just be used to close down to help enforce traffic, because obviously traffic isn't supposed to be there in the middle of the day regardless.
Okay, thank you, Paul. Charles, I'll do that when I just refer members back to performance, budget and risk. So if we could tailor our questions around that, but I know that it's an area that you're passionate about, Charles. So we allow that. And Paul, thank you for answering it. McDad, did you want to come back at all? I think you said you had a additional question.
Yes, just. Yeah, it relates to the improvement to community greens and open spaces, Chair, page 103. It's really, again, from the COVID experience. I think they've been a great help to people. They've been a great help to people once we were able to reopen the parks and then open them for longer than 4 o'clock. I have seen, multitudes of people using Tredegar Park, for example, Tredegar House around the lakes and all that. And I'm sure then Bellevue and Beechwood and all that. And it's all great. And I think this is something, that we ought to really keep going. So, I'm very pleased to see that commentary. I think the only point I was going to make, and as sort of our next meeting, Chair, will be about budget proposals, is that it would be good, and you might be...
I think it's great how you linked it. Well done. I was wondering where this was going, but you've created a link.
It would be good, Chair, if we don't put parking charges on people, because to be honest with you, what it does to them, their health, their mental health. The reason I'm bringing it now is because I think COVID might have reduced our income from our car parks without any doubt, isn't it? Because less cars, etc. So basically, that's the only comment I was getting.
For the comment, and we will save that for the budget meetings. So Paul, you don't even have to answer now, okay? There we are.
I don't mind, Chair. I'll answer what you want me to.
No. Well, I'm not shutting you down, McDad, but we shall park that one to the next meeting, okay? And
just to say to Paul, it's a great thing, but please make it, widen the access for people to make use of those lovely facilities.
Thank you, and I have my own thoughts on that, as we know. Is there anybody else? Thank you, McDad, and thank you for taking some of my feedback in the good nature that it was intended. I can't see anybody else indicating, so Paul, I've just got a couple, if that's okay. A lot of people have referenced household waste and so on. So on page 71, action 3, build a new household waste recycling centre. Have any potential dates been discussed to start this project, and what mitigations are in place to avoid further delays? Now, totally accepting that the delays are valid, so no accusation of anything there. I'll get you to answer that one first of all, perhaps, and then I'll ask the second question.
Sure. And in terms of that project, so it's linked, if you remember, back to the overall strategic aim of increasing recycling and meeting our targets. So the team haven't been focused on that. They've been focused on dealing with the day job, making the existing site work in the COVID environment. So that has taken a delay, and we've prioritised frontline services, and I stand by the decision to do that. The positive thing, though, I suppose, is actually that the purpose for doing that was to help meet our target. The impact of the initial changes on the smaller bins and the increased performance at the existing CA site means that we've actually substantially exceeded what was in the overall plan anyway. So we've gone above our target. We're at 67% when we needed to get to 64. So that's encouraging from our target point of view. The work will be picked up. It's one of those things, like many medium-term capital projects, that has had to take a back seat while we concentrate on making sure everyone gets their bins collected and the like.
Okay, thank you, Paul. I accept that, and it would have been a miss of us because it is part of the jigsaw, perhaps. There were two others, but I'm just going to do one. It's just picking which one. Right. Okay. So page 67, service risks. Something that I believe has affected other councils, was it Caerphilly? Ash dye black disease and eye weight network, both showing as high impact and probability. Is your service area confident that they are able to deal with these risks? If so, what mitigations are in place?
So it is flagged as a high risk. It is impacting on Newport dramatically at the moment. During the lockdown, actually, it accelerated rapidly through Newport. Just pure bad luck.
That's interesting.
I mean, it's been making its way across Northern Europe, and we knew this was hitting. It hit us a lot quicker than we expected, and as we caught up with the surveys, we were able to find it. I mean, people be aware that Killian Road has been closed for a time for us to deal with that. It's a huge issue because Newport actually has a very large number of ash trees, and they are concentrated largely on highways, which is the worst possible scenario you could have. If you've got them all in the forest, it's quite easy to deal with. Dealing with them along embankments of highways is a huge challenge. So the risk score is high there. One, because we have a tree budget of about, off the top of my head, about 150,000. We've already spent 3 times that just on Killian Road this year. And this is spreading all across Newport. It's not a Newport specific problem, as you mentioned. Other authorities are having it as well. It's recognised as a national problem, but it's a big problem. The tree team are dealing well with it in terms of identifying it and putting plans in place. It's a high risk due to the financial cost and also due to the impact. We take this number of trees out of Newport. Trees perform a really important role, not just in terms of their environmental impact, but in terms of absorbing noise pollution, and crucially for Newport in terms of flood risk. So we've got a large number of very mature ash trees, and the roots, you know, they're our second drainage system in Newport. So we are replacing those, and we have to replace them. But it's a huge project, and it's going to be a huge project over the next 4 years, really, for us.
Are we confident we can deal with it? I suppose I'm not sparring with you now, but
yeah, no, we are confident we can deal with it. but it needs to be highlighted as a big risk. You know, we don't have a tree budget to deal with a deal with a tree pandemic, because that's what we're facing at the moment. And we need to understand that we can't just chop the trees down. We need to deal with the aftermath in terms of making sure those areas don't flood as well.
Okay, thank you ever so much, Paul. Does anybody else have anything now before we let Paul get to his tea or supper? Well, Paul, thank you. I have to say, you know, perhaps however many years ago we started off sparring, but it's always a pleasure to have you to this committee. And I don't say that, I don't enter into tokenism. It's just so good to see somebody, as John said, totally on top of everything, and the enthusiasm you have for some of the environmental projects. Seriously, thank you ever so much, and pass on this committee's thanks to all your officers and colleagues. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Chair.
Okay, thank you to Paul. I thought that was that went reasonably well, and thank you to all the committee members for the questions you raised. I think the final gentleman we have is Marion, and for the purposes of the committee, and obviously Marion, but he's obviously got everything in front of him, if you know Marion. It's page 110 to 151. Marion, do you want to give us your normal overview? You're well adversed in these things, and you actually in the past address any of the areas of concern as you're going along. So if you want to follow that format again, if it suits you, and then I'll open it up to any questions.
Thanks, Chair. And I've also got my management team here with me as well. So I'll
thank you.
They can certainly pop in and deal with any matters of kind of detail. So you've heard this before, haven't you? It's not been exactly normal over the last six months, and you might think that, well, it doesn't really matter for sort of finance because they're in the back office, but actually it's been quite the opposite, actually. So let me just take you through some of the stuff that we've been dealing with. So in our revenues team, they've had to obviously carry on with the usual business of trying to collect council tax, trying to collect and deal with businesses around their business rates. But actually, over the last 6 months, they've also had to deal with the problems and challenges of business rates. You know, with businesses, we cancelled all the business rates this year for our hospitality and retail businesses in line with the Welsh Government scheme. Back in the first quarter, they paid 2,500 grants, £31 million worth of business rates grants to businesses in the first kind of lockdown period. They're now doing the same again because of the second circuit breaker. 1,500 grants paid to date, about 2.7 million. So Emma and her team have been under a huge strain. And I know Councillor Richard mentioned earlier that good to hear that people are very proud of their teams. Well, certainly I am very proud of all of my services, but that service in particular has been absolutely outstanding. And even just this afternoon, we were receiving letters from businesses saying, you know, thanks for all your help and getting the cash to us so quickly, and sometimes saying you're much better than the neighbouring councils. I won't say which one. You know, we borrowed money back in March in order to get cracking on those grants back in March and April and May. Some many councils waited until Welsh Government transferred some sort of cash over, but we just got on with it, borrowed some money at the end of March, short term of course, and got on with it. Accountancy, you know, we had the year end, we had the draft statement of accounts to do regular business as kind of usual, nothing usual in the way that it was being done, of course, and how it was being done. But since April, we've been trying to make sense, coordinate, working between our managers and Welsh Government on claiming, so far £10.1 million worth of expenditure for COVID-related expenditure from the Welsh Government's Hardship Fund, and also just over £3 million worth of lost income claims, again from the Welsh Government's hardship. That has been a monumental amount of work. Yes, it links in with some of our regular monitoring work, because obviously you can't differentiate between them both, but it has been a really huge effort to work around the organisation to make sure that everybody knows what the rules were, making sure that all the expenditure that's COVID related is being identified, getting it claimed. Really big piece of work there. Draft statements of accounts done, delivered 3 weeks later than the deadline, but in the circumstances, an absolute fantastic effort there. Procurement, really busy with working with services around dealing with suppliers during this period. Lots of government rules around supporting suppliers over this period, and actually paying them sometimes for when they couldn't deliver services. But actually, if we needed them there at the end of this, we had to make sure that we supported them. So so for example, the amount of work required to make sense of our Chartwell's contract with Bristol Schools, the amount of work required with Newport Live that runs the leisure centres, the amount of work with these big suppliers of ours and the bus companies as well, and actually trying to make sure that we try and keep them afloat in terms of their contracts with the council, so that they're there afterwards, has been monumental. And then last of all, audit really helped out and were flexible. Clearly, the audit plan was very difficult to make any movement on over the first quarter. So actually, a lot of their kind of work was really around the flexibility, and they helped out on those business grants. Did some fraud related work as well in relation to those business grants, and we've also had some of their members of staff seconded into the testing and tracing scheme, etc. So everybody has been really marvelous. Really seen people pull all the stops out, and couldn't be any more proud. And this afternoon, those letters that we received from the businesses were very good. It's good to see back office functions making a difference to people's lives. So that clearly has had an impact on performance. Clearly, if I'm looking at the report here, clearly we are struggling in council tax, business rates. That's a really difficult area with doing the work on the grants and collecting money when actually residents out there are also going through a very difficult time. The audit plan, clearly the original audit plan can't be met. There's been a new one done. It's a little bit over half of what the original plan was, but essentially they kicked off on that one in October. So they're trying to get through that now, and that will be difficult to achieve as well, because things like the auditors can't go into the schools, for obvious reasons. So they're going to do the best they can over here. Some of our projects have clearly been delayed. They're highlighted on the report, but actually we have made a reasonable progress on some of the projects that we have got. But we've really focused on kind of COVID, trying to keep the day job of collecting revenues, but also dealing with grants, financial management, financial monitoring, whilst also dealing with the kind of claims, and just making sure that we're working with service areas to make sure that some of our bigger key suppliers are actually going to be around when we need them, when we get through to the other side of this. So thank you, Chair. I mean, that's all the kind of detail I want to say.
Fascinating. And yeah, no, excellent overview. I'm guessing you don't want any of your colleagues to come in on anything particular, so I'm going to open it up to questioning. McDad, did you indicate there? I'm not certain, or was that a previous?
No, I have, Chair.
You have indicated, right? Okay. Jolly good. It's at the top there. So right, okay. Off you go, McDad.
Yeah, and again, Myron, we've got to be really quite pleased that, you know, we are here in November and we're having this meeting. The council is still going, and as far as we know, there are no financial issues there that we need to worry about. So I think that's great, isn't it? What I was wondering about, Myron, is you said we borrowed £3 million for short term. And I mean, again, you know, this is sort of the caring service we provide also. You said we've cancelled business rates. Did you really mean that? Or did you mean in a sense that we've been sort of compensated for those by some Welsh Government scheme? We haven't really cancelled those, or have we indeed cancelled them?
So we did cancel the business rates as far as the business payer is concerned. It was compensated to us by the Welsh Government. So retail and hospitality businesses under a certain £500,000 rateable value threshold, all their business rates were essentially cancelled for this current full financial year, compensated by Welsh Government.
Yeah. So I mean, we came out, you know, we were paid by the Welsh Government, which is, you know, which I knew about, and I think that's excellent. Those who are over £500,000 business rates, I think that was the cutoff, and I know at least of one of them, and I don't wish to mention it, but who, you know, we've agreed they postpone the payment for certain time. Yeah, I think my question is, it only one we're talking about? Is it more than one? When we say defer the payment, for how long are we deferring the payment?
So if I can pass it on to Emma, I mean, we have been talking to individual rate payers and being as flexible as we possibly can. You are right that there's a number of them. Maybe Emma can just provide a bit more detail, and obviously we a public meeting, so we mustn't mention any kind of names, etc. But maybe Emma can give a flavour as to some of the deals. Yeah.
Just give us an overview, but a really good question, McDad. Thank you.
Thank you.
Evening, everyone. Evening, Councillor Al-Nuami. As Myrian said, we have entered into some arrangements with certain ratepayers, and these are done on a very much a individual basis and a negotiated basis, whereby we have agreed, because of the very difficult trading situation that they're in at the moment, to allow them to defer their payments to the end of the financial year. That's not to say we are wiping the slate clean. We are most definitely still collecting the business rates, but what we have done, we've recognised their tricky position, and we have just agreed that they will pay them in March by March 2021, rather than the standard way, which is every month over 10 or 12 monthly instalments. So that is what we've done, and we've done it, you know, as I say, in selected cases, and it's not exclusively larger ratepayers. Some of our smaller ratepayers have also requested help, and we have been as flexible as we can under the regulations and the rules that we've got to collect our business rates under, because ultimately we're doing this on a national scheme, and it's Welsh Government's money effectively that we're collecting, on their behalf. So we have to be accountable, to the auditors at the end of the year to show that we've been reasonable in everything that we've tried to do.
Okay, thank you, Emma. I'm slightly confused now because I thought Myron says if they are small
50 grand
business ratepayers, then basically we've cancelled that for them because we're being compensated by the Welsh Government.
Yeah.
But you're saying we're still paying it.
No, over 50 grand.
Yeah, it depends on the nature of the business. The rate relief that Mariam was talking about applies exclusively to retail, leisure and hospitality businesses.
Okay.
It doesn't apply to, you know, somebody that manufactures or, you know, can't get hold of raw materials or those sorts of businesses. It's purely retail, leisure, hospitality. We have a lot of those at the town centre, but obviously there's plenty of other businesses in the city as well.
Okay, and are we hopeful that they will be paying by the end of the financial year there, or do we feel there may be a further period of grace? Or
what we're doing with our ratepayers, just to reassure you, we have regular meetings with them. It's not something that was agreed back in you know, May or June of this year and has just been put on the shelf. No, we have regular update meetings with these ratepayers, a check-in to make sure that they're on course. Some of them that we did agree plans with at the beginning of the year have started to pay. So I don't think any of these ratepayers are seeing this as the easy option, because they know ultimately it's got to be paid back. And if they don't pay it back this year, then they're going to have a very hard job next year to pay, you know, effectively pay double. So I don't think any of them are seeing it as the easy way out. In fact, it probably is more difficult for them because it condenses their payments, but it also gave them a little bit of breathing space, which some of these businesses desperately needed.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, McDad. John, you were next.
Yes, Chair, thank you very much. I'm a bit concerned. I mean, this meeting can be viewed by the public of Newport, and it's important that there's no confusion, and rates, the word rates are thrown about, and the ordinary man in the street might not understand. Can we have clarification, perhaps from Emma, or Newport City Council only collect business rates ultimately to pass on to the Welsh Assembly Government. In effect, it's their income, not ours. There's no financial benefit to the council. Domestic rates are collected by the council, by us, and spent by us to run the many services that we provide.
Emma, would you, I mean, yeah, I mean, essentially, yes. You know, we collect business rates on behalf of Welsh government. It goes into a pool for redistribution to local governments. So, you know, the only issue there is that, you know, Newport doesn't keep Newport's business rates. It's put into a pool and then distributed on a formula basis. So essentially, we are collecting it for local governments at the end of the day. The council suffers a cash flow, and there's a cost involved in that. But beyond that, it is ultimately an issue for the Welsh Government if it's not collected.
Okay, thank you, John. Thank you for seeking clarification on that, John. Has anybody else indicated? Have you finished, John? You finished? Yeah. Has anybody else indicated? Graham, I'm not sure if you do you have a question there, Graham? No. Okay.
Can I come in?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Well, Graham, I wasn't sure if you.
I've been putting messages up on the message board.
Yeah, I can see the messages, Graham, but do you have a question?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah. When can I get a good computer so I can join?
All right, well, okay.
Join with the rest of you. Other than that, I don't want to add to anything at all because I've not been taking part there.
Okay, thank you, Graham. Sorry, I thought you had a question, but I'm sure Myron can find some money in his budget for a computer for you.
Oh, please, somebody.
Sorry, I had to get that one in. So only one question from me. I think everything was covered. I think everybody else has said the question. Myron, I think in your narrative, your presentation at the beginning, you said residents are having a difficult time, our friends, neighbours are having a difficult time. On page 126, work with partner agencies and third sector to provide advice and assistance to those with debt and financial problems. Is your service area confident that this action will be completed by the end date, the 1st of March 2021?
Chair, thank you. I think I may have to ask Emma to pop in again. I think, if I'm right, is this on the 7th?
I've got page 126. Yeah.
Yeah, my pages.
No
Is this
problem.
the HMRC action?
Wasn't trying to catch anybody out, but obviously our businesses, of course, it's important that we're offering assistance, but our residents, our neighbours are finding things difficult at the moment, and I think it reads work with partner agencies and third sector to provide advice, Emma, and assistance to those with debt and financial problems. Now that was, I suppose, a goal, and sorry, you know, a performance indicate pre-COVID, so obviously becomes all the more important now. So that's why I thought it would be wise and sensible to ask. It's projected, I believe, to be completed on the 1st of March 2021. Is that still on target?
Would you like me to answer, Marianne?
Yes. Well, yeah.
That, as you rightly say, was set pre-COVID, and the intention was to set up a network of meetings with our registered social landlords, with the Citizens Advice Bureau, other people that have, you know, advice agencies, and people like the I can't think of the name of them now. The what are they called? The credit union. Yes, you know. Where we could look at getting messages and key messages to signpost those of our residents that are having problems to a more formal way of directing them towards help, if that makes sense. What we found, obviously that was written pre-COVID, is that since we had the COVID pandemic hitting and the lockdown in March, we have literally been an all hands to the pump situation, pretty much non-stop since that point. And if I can be quite candid with you, we haven't really had chance to do everything with that target that we would have liked to. What we have done, we've worked very closely with our partners in the benefits agencies, housing benefits, Citizens Advice. We've been dealing with, put lots of plans in place on our side to help our residents who needed to spread their payments because COVID hit and their incomes were affected and suddenly they couldn't make ends meet. So we've done all those practical things on our end. What we need to do now is to formalise things going forward for residents with financial problems, with meeting their council tax payments for the longer term, not just in the COVID environment that we've been working in at the moment. So yes, that is still a key priority of ours, because we recognise that by enabling those who are struggling with their finances to get those finances in better shape, we have more chance of getting our council tax paid on a regular basis and as it should be. And it also helps those residents who have those problems to maybe get things on an even keel, get their house in order, for want of a better word, which in turn helps them manage, in turn helps with mental health problems, with all manner of different things. There's usually a myriad of things that all go together. So yes, it is a key target, and it is one we are going to be pushing ahead with. But yes, you're right, there is more work to be done on it.
Okay, thank you for that. And obviously it becomes all the more important where people are potentially facing difficulties that they may not have faced. They may not have faced even at the beginning of the year. So thank you, Emma. Thank you for that reassurance there. I'll go back over to colleagues now. Are there any more questions from anyone? No. Right, so we're going to leave you guys go. You can stay if you want. I think Paul has decided to stay. He's still there, I think. So we must be very entertaining. But thank you for taking the time. Apologies for intruding into your evening. It was slightly later because the leader had a prior engagement. So thank you, and thank you to your team for the work that you're doing. Thank you ever so much.
Thanks all. Thank you.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Okay, well, thank you, everybody. I think I know that we've concluded the main business. What we need to do now is discuss, I think Neil and Gareth, we bring you guys in here, conclusion of committee reports. So as I understand it, following the completion of the committee will be asked to formalise its conclusions, recommendations and comments on previous items for actioning. So basically, from the questions that we've raised and so on, this is correct, Gareth, isn't it? Is there anything that we would like to amplify as standouts?
Well, Neil and Anne will have made a note of the questions and answers, and obviously comments that members made during the debate. So this is just an opportunity to highlight any concerns or issues that you may have in terms of the service area performance, the budget, or any service area risks that have been identified. So this is just about particular issues or concerns that you want to flag up for the cabinet members or heads of service.
Yeah, so is there anything, despite our rather vigorous question, is there anything else, or should we leave the minutes as they're being recorded?
I move that, Chair. I move the minutes, I think.
Yeah. I think we're right to do that. Would you like me to take a vote on that, or are we content? Yeah. Okay. So we leave that as it is. We now move on to item number 5, which is our further work programme update. I think the next meeting is this where. I think it's relatively simplistic. It comes up on, believe it, when we go into budget. So that's the next thing that we've got, the draft budget proposal coming up on after Christmas, the 11th of January at 4 p.m. Obviously, at this point, if there were any areas of interest that members wanted included on the further work programme, then we could look at doing that. Or are we content to move forward with the budget for the next meeting, and then maybe as we get a little bit more continuity with these meetings, deciding if there's any special areas of interest that we might want to include for the calendar year of next year, as opposed to perhaps putting something in ad hoc now. Although it's your committee, so if you want us to look at any areas, I think in the past, Mark, prior to you joining us, we've looked at housing and we've looked at infrastructure as some side issues, as it were, but still forming part of the committee. So are we content to review any special areas next year?
Chair?
Or Miqdad, do you have something that you would like us?
Well, I put it as a suggestion, Chair. If this Transport Commission have published its final report by the time we meet next, and if there is time, either that meeting or the meeting after, it would be good to have a presentation on it.
Okay, can I just check with I think Gareth, would that be something for this committee, Gareth, or would it be
it's something for this committee insofar as it relates to the service plan of city services.
Right, okay.
So it was referred to in Paul's service plan. So to that extent, yes, I think it's something you could call for, but only insofar as it relates to those performance measures and objectives in in the city service plan.
Would it sit more comfortably in overview committee and both?
Well, we don't have an overview. We have a management committee.
Yeah, management.
We have a partnerships committee. But this committee looks at the performance of city services. So to the extent that the Transport Commission work and the objectives were mentioned in Paul's service plan, then I think it's more appropriate to come back to this committee.
Thank you for your guidance on that. I wasn't certain. Well, there we are, McDad. So shall we resolve to monitor that, and if it does come up, then we can put it on the for the work program if something is agreed. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, good suggestion, McDad. I wasn't questioning you then. I thought I'd better check because I wasn't certain whether it would be for us or not. Is there anything else?
It's nice to see Gareth back in place.
It is. Yeah. It is.
It's nice to be back, John. Thank you.
Yeah, I hope you feel better, Gareth.
Yeah, a lot better. Thank you.
Good.
Good. Well, I think we're coming up. McDad, you predicted 9 o'clock finish. I think earlier we finished. Gareth would have stayed, and Neil and Anne. I think that concludes our business. Thank you ever so much, and thank you for your support. And I think we're getting a bit more. Well, I don't know. You guys have always been comfortable, but I'm getting a bit more comfortable with the virtual thing.
I'm glad Gareth was in the pre-meeting, Chair.
Well, there we are, and we're glad you're there because you had a chance to wear the points. You see, that's why you should be there for them. All right.
Well done,
hey, listen, I suppose the last thing to say is have a very merry, safe Christmas, everybody. And if I don't see
the 11th of January.
Yeah, well, we'll be in full council next week, of course, yeah. But maybe I won't have the opportunity to wish you personally a Merry Christmas. So thank you for everything, and thank you for your support.
Okay.
Thank you.
You too.
Bye-bye. Cheers.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.